Paul Lubicz, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you today. You're a global expert and leader in the field of well-being, and you're a coach, mentor, advisor for many top global CEOs, for Hollywood and A-list celebrities, and you've even worked with members of royalty. And let's be honest, you've had some really impressive clients in the past. You've worked with the likes of Rupert Murdoch, Elton John, Natalie Portman, just to name a few. And certainly we've had the opportunity to work closely together with companies around the world. And I've enjoyed every minute and learned so much from you. And I think when we wanted to explore this topic of mental health, you definitely were the first person that came to mind. And just because of your experience, but also, how we can together open this conversation, not just for individuals and leaders, but also for companies and their cultures. And I'm really excited to spend the next, half an hour with you exploring this, getting your ideas, and maybe, sharing that with as many people as possible so that they can take some things away around what is an emerging and very important conversation around mental health.
Well, first of all, Anna, thank you. And the feeling is reciprocated. I've always enjoyed working with you, and you're very, very kind, very kind. Well-being or mental health has really become something that is in the forefront of our minds, particularly with the backdrop of what's been going on in the world and the way that certain sort of things that have been very familiar and have supported us in our lives and been contributing to our well-being have unfortunately been taken away because of this pandemic. And people have been forced to work at home. The dynamic that has changed in regards to the way people communicate. Also, there's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people have been taken away from things that have been very familiar as well. So you could say that fear revolves around things that are uncertain or the unknown. So a lot of people have been, at the very least, very concerned, and at the very most, worried, and that has manifested in many different ways, as we're seeing today. I'm sure you recognize that in your practice as well as I do. And CEOs and organizations are starting to recognize now that well-being has to be something that they factor in.
And what do you think are some of the well-being strategies that people are adopting now within organizations? Have you seen or heard much about what you're hearing? Because so much has already been out there, but now we're seeing this real need to address. And I think it is, like you say, forcing CEO and companies' hands to actually start making these changes, and not just talk about it, but actually start acting on it. And I think that's the biggest problem. Even with our work together, we've seen that there's been a lot of talk about how we need to improve our well-being, how we need to become more resilient, how we need to really focus on, investing in ourselves. But you go into any culture and you see that you see the antithesis of that in the culture of an organization. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you've seen that is becoming, the forefront of how people are approaching well-being in companies.
From my personal experience, it has been twofold. One is offering media to the employees, to the staff. So offering, I've been doing in-house sort of workshops that they record and make it available to the employees in-house about well-being and practical tips about well-being, and also a little bit of psychology behind it and mindfulness. And in addition to that, sort of just a general motivation. That's one way to do it. The next level has actually been offering my time more proactively than reactively to the employees, to the staff in smaller organizations, offering the ability for someone that if they felt like reaching out, that they could, and they could have a conversation with someone that's neutral, someone that is not involved in the organization, so the politics are left out. There's no sort of water cooler sort of conversations. It's confidential. And giving someone the ability to have an outlet so they're the two sort of initial ways. I think what we're really talking about is, maybe what we could define what stress is, or what workplace stress is, and then we could go from there and talk about some strategies to help someone bring balance to that, or a remedy to the cause of that. What I've been seeing is the fact that one thing that has been a challenge is when we've been isolating is people go on a pilgrimage to work, and a pilgrimage is rather important because you get in your car or you get in some form of transport, and you take a journey to work. So you're preparing yourself to arrive at the workplace, and then you're engaging and collaborating. You're getting FaceTime with people, connecting. There's conversations outside of work. The in-between times are very important. There's fun, jokes, lightheartedness, really bonding. People are going for lunches, interacting in sort of ways we would normally do before this pandemic. And then when the workday is over, then they're making their journey on the way home. So they're able to sort of put their day to bed and have that time, that pilgrimage home, to process the day. And when they're arriving at home, they're kind of able to put that to bed to a certain degree. It's not always the case, but that's something that's an important ritual to be had. So when you are at home, you can be more present, and you've got somewhat of you've cleaned the day off to a certain degree, and then you're able to interact with your family, your friends, or engage in activities. Whereas when you're at home or isolating or working from home, that's not so clear cut. So that's one thing that I've noticed people have really been giving me a lot of feedback, and that's just in my personal experience. Moving on from that, we're meant to have a collective experience. We're meant to have human contact and be in person. We're meant to be able to share, as I mentioned before, these in-between times, a smile, a joke, just relating to someone who's going through a similar experience in their life, something off topic from work. And when you're doing very focused sort of Zoom or media type interactions, it's very on topic, and the small chit chat's a little bit sort of awkward because it's 2D, it's not 3D, and so those things have really stepped away and are missing. And then the other pieces, the chance to be out in nature is something that people have been spending less time out in nature, and doing things that they love. Being creative is a very important thing. I know a lot of doctor friends and doctors I work with and interact have been given prescriptions to not watch the news. So these are some of the things that I found challenging from my general practice and the companies I work with, and the feedback I've been receiving. And the CEOs have been finding that there's some part of their workforce that have had a very good time during this because they have a better living situation. Maybe they have more room in their house, or they have sort of just their kids are a little bit older, have grown up. They've got an office. They've had the ability to sort of work with this pandemic and being able to find ways to make it work for them and for their life more accurately. And then other people have had a more difficulty if they've got young kids, or they don't have as big a space at home. They've got a lot of other challenges that have made it increasingly difficult, particularly people that live in big cities, condensed cities, where in a big city like New York or like London, you live a lot of your life outside in the cafes, in the restaurants, in the bars, in the parks, and living your life in a sort of a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom sort of apartment. That's very difficult for a lot of people. So I think just in general, they're being isolated, they're the things that have been very, very challenging for people. And as I mentioned, in the backdrop, things unfolding with a lot of uncertainty, it's caused a pressure cooker for people to start to recognize that mental health or well-being or bringing balance into your life is something that is more important now than it has been maybe in the past, because these things have been turned up and now we can't, maybe we have to face it.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing as well is that the nature of the CEO or the leader's role is just changing significantly now. where it's not just about business performance and shareholder value, where we really have to invest in and demonstrate this care and consideration for people. And for many CEOs and leaders, that isn't an easy thing to do, because it requires them to demonstrate their own vulnerabilities, and it requires them to demonstrate a level of humanity, I guess, to people. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is I think being able to help some of these CEOs and leaders shift into that space. So I'm interested in how you work with CEOs and leaders around helping them show more of who they are, so that people can connect and people can feel comfortable opening up about themselves.
So what I would call what you described, and I feel that's very accurate, Anna, is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And the way maybe our generation or the generation before us came through was really stiff upper lip, work really hard, possibly decorum around conversations or topics were less of a focus, and it was more sort of just push through it and drive through it. And now the generation is coming through a lot more sort of aware, and also the sensitivity of the time that we're in, and people's heightened emotions cause more volatility around sort of subjects and topics that will require sort of more sensitivity or compassion or empathy. So just bringing that conversation to the forefront and getting the leaders to really understand that them being in integrity, them really acting in good faith and doing their very best to be aware and compassionate and empathetic is something of great value, because what it does is it develops a resonance with the work team, with the team. And it creates the ability for people to connect and to sense when a leader is being a little bit more displaying soft skills and being aware and emotionally intelligent, somewhat vulnerable in regards to these topics. It is actually a strength. It's not a weakness, and it draws people to that leader and allows them to see the leader leading from the front. And what it does is it builds relationships, and it builds connections and resonance and relatedness to people. And any successful team I've ever worked with, the people have definitely got their eyes on the prize. They're really aware of the commercial goal, but they're also doing it for each other because they've built a sense of camaraderie. And when you're in a team and people are working and pulling those, doing the extra things for each other, that's really powerful. And when you're able to create an environment which is built on foundations of things like emotional intelligence, there's a number of other words involved in there. You can throw trust in there, and you can throw tolerance in there. You can throw collaboration and ability. Resilience is definitely being robust in the face of adversity is a very, very powerful tool. So all these different, very, very powerful words make a part of the ingredients of a soup for a successful team, a high-performing team that is able to be able to move into any set of circumstances and improvise and navigate and collaborate. And everyone's seen as a resource. Everyone has a voice, because the majority of teams, you get 2 or 3 very powerful individuals, as we've both seen in our practice. And they take up a lot of the airtime, and you're ignoring 5 or 6 sort of unique individuals with unique resources and unique perspectives that are valuable. And you can play the game of slaying the idea, puncturing the idea, and you might come up with a better idea if you pay attention to those others. So all those things, in general, you could say, create a workplace or a work environment that's very encouraging for high performance.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think, you and I have worked together before. We've worked with teams around the world. And we've seen the power of bringing people together. And I think we had the advantage of being in person with people, but now it's just that extra bit difficult, isn't it, to try and bring these teams together and be able to have these sort of real and honest conversations with each other, How are you finding this Zoom virtual culture and being able to have these conversations online? Are you finding you're still able to have them in a good way, or do you feel like we really need to get back to that in-person interaction in order to, move people forward? How do you get a good balance at the moment?
I strive for in-person if I can.
Yeah.
I strive for it. I've traveled internationally quite a fair bit the last 18 months, more so the last 12 months. I really strive for that in person because you can't beat that. And it's as I've mentioned, this is my third time mentioning, is the in-between times.
Yeah.
When you're having those conversations, when you really land on something that's powerful and brings people together. And being able to be in person, you're able to have a certain impact that I feel is more engrossing and immersive than looking at a screen. But I will take connecting with anyone on a screen or on the phone rather than not giving someone support at all.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that this time has done is allowed us to recognize that sooner or later, if we're not paying attention to our health and well-being, we're going to be forced to do it.
Yes.
So then, moving on, we can talk about sort of some ideas that might be helpful for someone or a team that they can be aware of at the very least. As myself particularly, I'm very aware that on my best day with my strongest effort, all I can do is inspire someone with an idea. And if I land on an idea that someone connects to and then they make it their own and take responsibility for that, then I feel as though that's the most effective and most powerful.
We can't change people. We can only inspire them, right?
That's our best shot at it, I feel. I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah. And now I think it's a great opportunity for so many companies, given that we are going to see more people come back together in person. I just get excited about the possibilities around that, is that everyone's gone through this huge change. People are really seeking meaning. People are seeking engagement. And to be able to amplify teams now as people are coming back together, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to do that. And certainly, people like yourself and I and so many other great people that do this work, it's important for them to start to step up around this and really, encourage this conversation and ensure that we are really addressing what's important to people. I mean, that's the new bottom line. Let's not forget that. It's people, planet, and then profits, I think is the order of sequencing these days, isn't it? I mean, we can't neglect what we've known for such a long time now, and now it is really about action.
Time for action. Very true. Very true. Time for action. Very good. Yeah. Very good. So the teams that I have been working with and things that I've been encouraging, which is I found have been most useful or gain the most amount of traction, is just really bringing parts of themselves to the forefront. Just being aware that people need to connect, as we're meant to have human contact and connect. To find things that are meaningful in our life and follow those. Our purpose is very, very important to do that. And I think right now what you're sort of highlighting with that is what's important to us. What is important to us? Now we've had time to step away from maybe a flow, and the world's been paused for a couple of years, and we've had the ability to really reassess and to have some inquiry. At least a percentage of people have. They're looking at their life in a different way and what winning looks like and what they've been trading in their life for a perceived value, something that they thought was important to them, and they've been able to spend time really making choices now that are different. And I think well-being, or someone's health, or someone's peace from mind, someone's freedom in their life have come to the forefront. So these are just at the very least, people have had an opportunity to take stock and to do some self-inquiry, and then sort of growing from that, sort of when you have more of an awareness of who you are and what you want, you can also sort of start to understand maybe some things that have been causing you to be out of balance, or even at the very least ideas that have been causing you to be out of balance. and then sort of improving your relationship with those ideas or yourself and how you perceive those ideas. Because the ideas that exist in our head, which exist nowhere else, they to a certain degree really dictate whether we've got giving ourselves permission to be happy or we're struggling. So positive thoughts, positive words, and positive actions, they're really big things, and it brings a lot of joy and happiness and freedom in someone's life when you've got the ability to have that kind of perception. It's not always the case, and I'm not pretending to that life is always that, but having that kind of an ability to look through that lens in general will improve your well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're entering into a new paradigm now where hopefully this does become the new norm for companies, that they start to embed these new cultural norms around happiness, around well-being, around freedom, around being yourself. I mean, there's so many new ideas now that I think companies really is an opportunity to change the whole cultural framework and how they operate. I'm also interested just around, very specifically mental health, around the topic of anxiety and depression. And, again, it's great to have this conversation around well-being. And sometimes my experience of working with companies is they do sometimes miss this layer of how to really bring some of these, what we call, these are very highly stigma-related labels, aren't they, to have depression or to have anxiety. And perhaps, when you walk into a room, you can notice when people perhaps potentially are suffering from these things. And how do you facilitate that in the best way? How do you really get people to speak up about things like anxiety and depression and, anything else that sits under these labels per se?
Giving people resources and outlets, and giving them access to professionals, people who have got, who are actually qualified to make some kind of a diagnosis or a recommendation, but allowing people the freedom to be human, not being robots, just acknowledging the fact that this has been a very stressful time and it has taken its toll on people. And if people are working at a slightly different pace or they're not performing at their normal level, it's not, there's a multiple amount of reasons. And I think having really a strong sort of relationship, particularly if you're a team leader, with your team, and giving people the ability to genuinely feel like they can come to you and have frank conversations and have an open door policy where people feel safe, that they're not going to be able to give you some information and then it'll be weaponized against you. That's a really powerful tool. So creating sort of a really very human environment, with the team, letting people know that you're there pulling for each other, and sometimes you're you need to take a breath, take a beat.
Yeah, psychological safety, it's such an important element to bring into teams and create that safe space for people. And without safety, you really don't have the opportunity to demonstrate, who you really are and what's really going on for you. And so I think that's one of the key things that I sort of take away in working with companies, is how do we really create that safe space for people to step into and reveal themselves, as much as they feel they can. And over time, that deepens and that cultivates something quite special as well in teams. And it's always a real blessing working with teams when you can really open that space up for them, isn't it? I mean, it's such a wonderful experience, and it's a real gift, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, judgment's very, very detrimental. And normally someone that is judging someone else is very hard on themselves. So allowing people to be human, allowing people to make mistakes, and then give them the opportunity to learn from those mistakes. See it as a big obstacle course. And when they do make a mistake, or when they do fall short of the mark, if the intention and good faith is there, and they're really wanting to do better, give them the tools and the support to do that, and be slow to judge and quick to support.
Brilliant. Absolutely. All right, so I just to sort of finish this off, I think it's about that time. I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I'm really looking to develop a wellbeing strategy for my organization. What are some practical tips for me to really start to lead this change and open up the dialogue around mental health and wellbeing?
Well, just making a statement that that's the intention. And I think if you speak to the audience that it applies to, they're going to inform you. Ask them what they think they would like or need. Speak to your people, have those conversations. And if you speak to the people, because every individual is different. I might like going for a walk down the beach, and someone might like to play Call of Duty on the computer, right? We're all so different. And things that we like to do to express ourselves or to unwind or to bring some form of balance in our life, because the reality is we're always coming in and out of balance. There's no such thing as I've obtained well-being and that's it. We're coming in and out of balance all the time.
Yeah.
And in the course of speaking to people, they're going to inform you of what they feel as though is going to really be beneficial to them. Because if we are all taking responsibility for our own well-being and having that collective conversation, then together we'll be able to create an environment that is conducive or will support that. Because expecting, as I mentioned, us always to be in this perfect sort of balanced state, I don't feel as though it accounts for the reality of life. But having the opportunity to go back into balance when you've come out of balance is a very, very valuable tool, because consistency, not perfection, is the game. And if you're playing the short-term game, you need to open up the aperture of the lens and have a look and play the long game and over a period of time, because playing the short term and using these sort of ideas as a fad or something that is going to be sort of aimed for perfection or extreme, that's just swinging the pendulum in the other direction, and they'll never over a period of time work. So consistency, not perfection.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That was great advice and really interesting insights, of course. And it's always a pleasure to connect, Paul, and I look forward to bringing this out to our audience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. And to everyone out there, I'm sending my warmest regards, and keep moving forward positively. Super positive. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you.